Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Art of SBA Lending. Today on the podcast, we have Chung, SBA sales leader at First Bank. John is based in Southern California and has over 20 years experience in commercial lending. And I wanted to have him on the podcast to learn more about what it's like being an SBA sales manager in today's climate. So without further ado, here's my interview with Chung. So have you been in SBA the whole time? Are you a lifelonger?
No, I actually started, way back in the day, I started as an underwriter, analyst to be more exact, and then kind of did underwriting on loans, and then was more of a business banker, commercial banker, did a lot of construction lending, mini perm financing, and then kind of flipped to the permanent financing side after that. CNI, all in all, business banking, commercial banking, and a few institutions. I had 7A role underneath me as well. So, pretty much owner user in the financing world is kind of what my background.
Okay, and now you're SBA sales leader at First Bank, and so you're doing primarily 7A stuff, right?
Yeah, I'd say 95% of what we're doing is 7A. We had a pilot program of 504 loans that we're going through. We're going through our first closing that should happen actually end of this week on the first closing on the 504 side of things. So that's a little bit of a learning curve, different world. I think it's great we have that program because just to gain some more market share. But I think before you can run, you need to walk, and we're kind of in that walking stage right now.
So how did you land at this gig?
The former sales leader here left a few months ago, and Patty and Marina, who worked for me at two different institutions, reached out to the head of SBA and kind of said, you should meet John, and John, you should come over and help out. So we met. My boss Jerry is a great guy. We have different skill sets for sure. We got along really well. So I had a decent in because Patty and Marina are obviously producing quite a bit.
So they got to handpick their boss, basically.
In a certain sense, yes. But
man, that's power.
Gotta make sense for both sides, right? The big boss has got to like me, and I gotta like him, and we just gotta be on the same page mentally. So we are.
What was it about your previous experience working with Patty and Marina that they thought, hey, we've worked with this guy in the past. What did they like about that they thought would work over here, do you think?
I think personality wise, obviously I'm not a micromanager. So I don't think I need to micromanage those gals. They're very self-driven. That's part of it. One strength that I have is kind of more in process. And trying to streamline processes and make it more efficient. And I think that's what was attractive to them, because obviously we're smaller institution. We're just trying to make something that's sustainable for growth. And that's difficult to do, right? So just working with the various partners, closing, underwriting, operations in general. And making sure we're all on the same page. I think that's something that's attractive for them to have me come over, and also attracting new talent, right? Because I think it's great if you're the biggest producers, right? But that's got to be a lot of strain on yourselves as well, right? That, other folks, a lot of pressure. Other folks aren't contributing as much, so you kind of got to carry the load. As a sales leader, I think competition is always good. I think the bank wins when there's competition overall, right? And I think not that Patty and Marina need more driving, but I think it's also something that they take pride in being number one, right? And they remaining number one, so to speak. So,
yeah, that's true. Getting on the top of the leaderboard has always motivated me more, like a lot more than like money, for example. Like
for sure,
just like winning. Sure. Some people just like being number one.
Some people like just the little trinket awards. I mean, they just, it just makes them feel good, right? And I'm a big believer in coming up with more creative awards.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, everyone can get a plaque. I mean, come on, right? I mean, but um, one thing back in the GE days that we used to do is we had the big hitter award, right? So you go to Louisville Slugger and you get an engraved bat, which is pretty cool. All different
Oh,
colors, and you
that's
can
a
engrave
good
it any way
idea.
you want it to. It's really cool. Big
Yeah.
hitter award. I think it was really that's how it originated there. We moved to like mini footballs and you engrave those as well. I'm a sports guy, so I like different types of sports. Patty's a big basketball fan, so I think that's something that she would definitely want. Something she's a huge Lakers fan, so
Yeah,
it's be interesting
nice.
this year.
Some courtside tickets.
I'm sure she can get them. She knows all the right people.
Yeah, it's funny how this the sales manager role is. I don't know if it's shifted or if it's always been like this, but maybe you can tell me. But I feel like sales manager, it's almost like the sales manager position these days is more so dealing internally, doing exactly what you're saying, working with the credit and closing counterparts to kind of pave the way to make just smoother deals for the BDOs, which make them happy because they're always complaining about their deals taking too long or this or that in closing,
Yeah,
right? Has it always been like that?
I think so. I think it always kind of has been like that. I think you need to play well with others internally. And kind of, if you're going to try to institute change, I think you got to look within your own group first, right? To try to make sure we're doing the right things and, we're coming to the table with the right attitude and not slowing the process from our side, right? Because a lot of it, since we do SBA lending, so a lot of successful small businesses out there, but they get sidetracked and don't give us the documents we need to process their requests. So I think it's just kind of staying on top of them on that side of things, and then making sure our home is clean, so to speak, before we start trying to streamline other processes. And we've got really good partners here. I've got a really good team together, and that's part of the reason I'm here in El Segundo, because First Bank out of North Carolina, not the First Bank that's here in Southern California, um, owns SBA Complete, which is where I'm located. I'm in the SBA Complete office. So SBA Complete provides a lot of different services, not only the First Bank, but other partners, other banking institutions
Right.
nationwide.
They're an LSP.
Yep, correct.
So you're based where a lot of the processing happens?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our underwriters are a lot of them are off-site, right, working from home. But like the closers, the operational folks on the back end are here. Our closing managers here as well. So it's important for me to be here.
Do you like the folks working from home, or would you rather them all be in the office?
I think it really depends on the person and the role that they have, right? Underwriters, I think, can be extremely effective at home as long as they collaborate well with their manager and they're all on the same page. Um, I personally, myself, I like coming into the office. I'm kind of an old school person that way. I know a lot of roles, obviously, post COVID, have changed to just work from home. But for myself, I like actually meeting people instead of doing it over the phone. So I think for myself, it's
Yeah,
important for me to
because
be.
how could you possibly go out and hire? I mean, we're doing it, but I mean, how could you hire a closer who's working remote tomorrow, train them, get them to buy into the culture when they're working from home in Missouri?
We have a lot of closers that work off site, and they work extremely hard all hours of the day. I think a lot of it comes down to experience and just their years of experience that they've been doing it, and then just understanding our process here, right? I think that's
Right.
how it works.
But then you're stuck only being able to hire the people that already know how to do the job. Essentially, it's just a matter of adapting to your process. But bringing in new people is pretty much impossible from a remote setting.
Yeah, it's especially now in the SBA world, hiring underwriters, salespeople, operational folks. It's very hard. It's very competitive out there. I think a lot of banks are trying to, hire on that side.
Is your sales team like? Because I know Patty's a big producer. Is it like one of those shops where it's like built around big producers, or is it like everyone does 20 million, or is it like there's some big producers and then some people that are just not doing a lot? I know at my last place, it was kind of like you could have like one guy doing 100, another guy doing 50, another guy doing 30, and then like 7 people doing like 4 to 8. Like, how is it spread out at your shop?
Yeah, I think before I got here, just based upon the production reports I saw, it was a lot of kind of that, a mix, some bigger producers and some smaller producers and so on and so forth. But I think I mean, any sales manager is going to say, yeah, give me like 5 or 6 really big producers and away we go, right? I think it's got to be a match with the bank. I don't think, we want to bring on folks that are just basically struggling. I don't think we do that as a service to ourselves or to them, right? So it's got to make a good match on the credit box and what they're kind of bringing in here, right? So perfect world, everyone does 15 million or more here, because I don't really like going through the hiring process. It's a variable, right? You don't know. I like to keep my people and have them stay for a long time. So the process of hiring is difficult. It's tough. It's oftentimes a guess, right? Because you don't know how they may have performed historically really well, but that may have been a function of where they were at rather than anything else, right? So you got to kind of believe in the person.
I mean, if you come in and you don't produce anything, I mean, then you usually will quit or get fired, but oftentimes they'll just fire themselves, because who wants to be a BDO that's not doing anything? And they'll just leave. But what if you have like a mediocre BDO who's like scraping together 7 million annually? Like, they're still technically profitable for the company. Would you keep those folks around, or would you fire them?
Yeah, I think I would. I try to work with them, maybe try to take them to the next level. I mean, to your point, I mean, it's kind of hard to let go of somebody who is producing and making money for the institution, right? So I try to work with them, to be honest, and try to figure out different ways to kind of take them to the next level. I think it'd be really hard for me to fire somebody like that if I wanted to, right? I don't think that's the right message we want to put out there. As you know, this is a pretty small world, right? Everyone kind of knows everybody, right? So if they're producing and they're making income for themselves as well as the bank, I try to work with them to try to get them to do more.
But if their goal is 15 and they're only doing 7, I mean, technically, couldn't you say you didn't meet your goal? You're fired.
Technically, yes. I think a lot of it has to do with effort as well. If I'm seeing they're trying to put the effort into it, and then I'll definitely work with them.
Right. Well, and also, like, did you get to the 7 by submitting 50 million to underwriting, and then half of it got declined, and then half of it died in closing, and you're using up all these resources to get to 7? Or are you just kind of being more selective about your deals, maybe, and maybe you had some bad luck here and there, and we got to 7? So I guess that would also play an impact, right?
For sure. If they're just bringing stuff, throwing it against the wall, see if it sticks, and taking up resources, that's going to be a problem, right? Because I think any BDO that comes to our institution, I want them to have a pretty decent idea of what we do and don't do. And if they don't, then that's shame on me, right, for not disseminating that information. I think clogging up the system is a big problem for a lot of institutions, right? So just making sure that we're all efficient, right? And pre-screening kind of the right deals. I mean, there's always going to be a 50-50 deal that BDO or myself just isn't sure, our credit administrator is going to be comfortable with. But that's few and far between. I love to see from our side, from submittal, a 70 to 80%, if not more, hit rate. The ones we lose on, the 20-30% would be the 50-50 deals that we're just not sure, right? But once somebody's here for a while, including myself, I think, we got to be more efficient, because it's not even if we want to move forward on that deal, we're going to win it necessarily, right? So, I think that's just the first stage. And I think, like a lot of institutions, this particular bank went through kind of that stage, right, of just hiring a bunch of folks. And, not to say anything bad about it, I just think that some of them were misses, and there's always going to be misses when you hire folks.
How many BDOs did they have at the height of it? Like 10, 12?
Based upon the information I saw, I think 12.
Yeah. And what is it down? Is that like half now?
Yeah, it's a little janky because I have a counterpart right now out east, and I'm not as familiar with what they're doing. I know he's got 4 folks right now. No, let's say 5 folks in total. And then from my side, I've got 3, including myself, and then the 4th that's going to be coming on board on Monday.
Oh,
So
okay.
9 total. Yeah.
So how do you manage a top producing, I'm talking 50 million production type of BDO? That's different, right?
It's much different. I think, as manager, you wear different hats. And I used to think that you just treat everyone the same and everything just goes well, right? It's like a utopian society. But, certain people may need some prodding and certain people don't, right? They just need the support. Sometimes my job is just listening to challenges, right? And maybe it's something I can't even do anything about, but just being kind of psychiatrist, listening to kind of, issues that may arise and not being able to do much about it, but, just being that ear to listen to what the challenges may be. Larger producers, most of the time, it's more process oriented in the challenges that they have, right? If they're bringing that much kind of volume, it's important for us to have policies and procedures and in place to kind of withstand that kind of volume, right? I think that's a challenge for any institution. And since here there was a gap and some folks left, I think that's something that we need to kind of ramp up again. Getting good underwriters, getting good closers is part of it as well. It's always chicken or egg thing, right? Do you hire the producers and then once they start producing, then you bring in the support staff? I'm a big believer that you hire the support staff.
Opposite, right?
Because they need to ramp up too and learn how we do things here, right? I'd rather do that and be ready for the volume that I'm expected to bring. If I don't,
Smart.
Then, shame on me.
Yeah, because everyone falls into that trap. I've been there at institutions where they're like that, where it's like, oh yeah, let's see the volume first, and then let's go out and hire people. 6 months later, like you're too late.
yeah, and especially in today's market where it's really hard to find people, and
right.
I think you gotta find that support staff first, in my opinion. And thankfully, First Bank, that we're based on North Carolina, and my boss, Jerry, very supportive of SBA. So, I have the resources. We have the resources at our disposal to do so.
So what you said about just kind of listening, that's a big part of it, huh? It's not necessarily fixing. Like, were you always like that as a manager? Like when you were first kind of into management of salespeople, did you try different approaches to kind of find what you're ultimately, what your style in management has become? Was it kind of like just trial by error and trying to figure out how to get to this point of being a good manager?
I think when I first became a manager, I thought that you just treat everyone the same and that should work. And that's just clearly does not work, right? I think as a manager, especially on the sales side, I've got to be able to do it myself and have a history of being able to do it, because it's hard to try to tell people to do something if you haven't done it yourself. So I think it kind of evolved as I kind of spoke to the folks, and some people, some producers just really don't need much, right? They just need your support, and communication is key, right? When they need your help, that you're there. But if you're constantly on top of them, they're just not going to like it. They're going to leave, right? I think the biggest thing is streamlining process for the bigger producers. Like I said, I think, it's frustrating to be on the sales side and have a bunch of deals that are doable deals that the bank and the credit folks are going to like to do, and not just be able to process it. That's a big problem, right? And that's a good problem to have because you at least have the deals. But I think it's really important that we collaborate with closing and underwriting to make sure it's a seamless process.
And you've been at a good amount of institutions. You've seen a lot of different ways.
Yep.
By the way, when you look back at all these different banks that you've been before here, which sort of period do you think you learned the most about the business in? And that you're still bringing to your business today when you're coaching your team or you're doing your own deals and you're applying your now philosophies towards just doing deals and the business in general? Like, where did you learn that?
Probably just the length of time, the different roles I had, probably City National Bank, acquisition. It was kind of a community bank that was growing, had a definite niche within, entertainment and high net worth individuals. So when I worked there, business banking was relatively new. So kind of navigating through that whole process was very interesting. They've always had commercial banking there, but business banking was kind of new, right? So you had entertainment, You had the retail branches that were producing a lot of deposits, bringing a lot of deposits as well. So I think learning there, because I was one of the first business bankers hired by City National Bank, right? And the problem with a lot of institutions is segmentation, right? Because business banking, 3 to 20 million gross sales on the revenue side, and then certain dollar amount, no higher than that on the amount of deals that you can do, right? So you had commercial banking pushing down, business banking trying to push up a little bit. Then you had branch RMs trying to push up into our world as well. So I think just based upon it was a new product, business banking there, and based upon all the different groups that the different revenue streams are already there. I think that's where I kind of learned a lot. And we went through some turnover, and I had a huge region for a while. For a little while, I had Magic Mountain all the way to Ventura, all the way down to Commerce. So I had 24 branches, 14 business bankers. And that's when I really learned how to manage people better than I was, because you had to at that point. It was kind of sink or swim. But I would say historically, pre 2007, 2008, GE was a lot of fun.
I was going to ask you about that. Were you a 7A BDO at GE?
Yeah. So I was part of the business property group, single tenant investor or owner user side of things. So great group, a lot of fun. We had a great team. A lot of those GE folks I still keep in contact with. Great producers, great personalities. And then obviously 07, 08 hit. It changed everything. But that was a lot of fun. GE Capital was great.
Was that where you learned SBA?
Kind of cut my teeth, yeah, there, I'd say. Before that, I was working on the other side, on the construction lending side of things. So I had some success at GE because a lot of the buildings that we were trying to finance, I knew the developer on because I did construction loans for them, like concrete industrial tilt-up buildings. So I kind of flipped on that side.
What made you do that? What made you go to GE in 2006?
It was interesting. I got recruited. There was an account executive at GE that was highly successful, and I was working at a small bank, very small bank at that time. And the reason that GE couldn't close on the loan was the one building that they were trying to finance, they couldn't get C of O on because they had an elevator there. And going through the city of Irvine is often tough, right? Irvine Company, all of that, right? So we closed on a loan in like 2 weeks, like a bridge loan to be taken out by GE. And the account executive was very appreciative, had me introduced to his boss. And then we got along, and I went through a rigorous interview process because it was something new for me, right? I get it, right? So,
how old were you?
So,
like 20s?
So, I wish. So I'm turning 50 this year. So, 06. So what, 16 years ago, 34?
Okay.
33, 34.
All right. So you, was he like, oh, you should come work for us as an SBA lender?
I guess he just liked the style on getting stuff done, right? I mean, when you work at a small institution, the good news is you can move pretty quickly on stuff, right? So I had a broker who was a tough broker, real estate broker. So I gained some, capital with him. And then I had the G account executive, right, who kind of saw the challenges that I was having on my side and a quick timeline that we performed in. He just, he had some pull because he was so successful at what he did. So he introduced me to his boss.
But why'd you want to do that though?
Partially because the bank I was working for kind of sold me a bill of goods in a certain sense, right? I was the head of real estate. So we were doing owner user real estate, some mini perm loans and some construction loans. And I got into that institution because I did construction loans quite a bit in the past. And the chairman of the board, actually the second in command on the board, was a guy who ran a construction company, basically, right? So that's how I got into that side of things. Um, um, I think I always wanted to kind of work for a larger institution, and it was really important who my boss was going to be and who my associates were going to be around me. And I was impressed by the folks that they had, to be honest with you. And GE's always had a good name.
Yeah.
So it was partially that I was sold a bill of goods in the company that I was at. We weren't performing that well. And that's, that was the heyday of what, 04, 05, like everyone was, and their sisters trying to open up a bank at that time. It was kind of in vogue to do so, which, looking back was a really bad idea considering what happened in 08. But yeah, so I was kind of enamored by the folks that I was going to be working with, and GE always had a good name.
They had a good group. I mean, that was the group, right? Those days with the GE, CIT, Money Store, all that stuff. I mean, the people that came out of that era, are running the industry today, and everyone had such good training back then. Did you go through a training program when you joined GE?
I did go through a training program, but I don't think that's really how I learned. I think it was more based upon just kind of getting thrown into it and talking about, having a good, kind of policies and procedures. I mean, GE was awesome at that side of things. We had so much at our fingertips, to be honest with you. They had a fleet that they owned as well, GE. The healthcare was unbelievably good. So everything was kind of taken care of. They just really want you to take people out. If you weren't using your credit card, they would ask you why. They never asked me, but they're asking folks on that.
No, not in El Segundo. I mean, it's expensive out there. But
yeah, listen, I was based in Irvine at that time, which is also extremely expensive.
Not much better. I mean, it's fascinating because everyone speaks so highly of it. Why hasn't anyone recreated? I feel like you can't recreate it because you can't recreate the time of that period.
Well, right? You would need to have a really large company, most likely a non-bank lender, try to recreate that, right? And GE in the industry at the time, old Jack Welch days, right? It's like if you're not first or second in the industry, then get out, right? And it changed a lot over the years, as obviously you've seen that GE Capital got sold off bit by bit, right? I think it's a really tough time, 08. So it would be hard to kind of duplicate that. I think you'd need to have a really large player like a GE size that'd be interested in getting to the industry. And I don't think there's going to be players doing that anytime real soon.
Live Oak is probably the closest person bank doing it. Because if you wanted to go out and ramp up to 100 BDOs, which CIT had up until, 08, you'd have to be able to scale up the back office to support it. And that just seems like an impossible task in today's environment.
GE was notorious for overhiring too, right? Knowing fully well that 20-30% is going to cut off of the bottom, right? And that's just the way they did it, right? I mean, thankfully, I wasn't affected by that until the very end. But that's just kind of their thought process on things. It was cutthroat.
Did you get laid off because of the recession?
We got laid off because GE Capital just started to fail at that point. I think there are 4 rounds of layoffs, and I was, I think the 3rd or 4th round towards the end, because they try to keep on to the producers as much as they could. Right.
Must have been miserable at that time.
It was. They came back and approached me, I think 2 weeks later, and they had a role for me, and they couldn't talk to me about that role until then. And I told them to pound sand at that point, because I think I was a little emotional at that point. But yeah, it was a tough time. It was definitely tough. I think it's interesting seeing the period we're in now. Very different, but probably just as many question marks of what's going to happen, right? If not more, right? Banks obviously are much more capitalized now, but this inflation is crazy. With the rising rate environment is also kind of tough to work with as well. Unemployment's still low, right? So it's a very interesting time we're in right now. I think the next 2 years can be pretty tough. And one reason that I kind of switched from, my last institution where I was doing a lot of basically investor real estate lending, is right now banks are hurting for capital, right? Loan to deposit ratios are high, across the board. I mean, gone are the EIDL funds, the PPP money's gone, it's spent. Bank accounts are starting to drain because the economy is getting better and people are spending. And the flip side of that is loan to deposit ratios are going up, right? So, to be at a 7A institution where, it's a best route to do business acquisition, partner buyouts. I mean, it's the best in the 7A world, right? I mean, that's kind of how everyone defaults. And to be able to minimize down payment on real estate is what we do here, up to 100% financing. I think it's huge. On top of it, the flip side, on the bank side, we're selling our paper, right? Like a lot of banks, right? So we just hold on to the unsecured piece. So, fee income is king right now, I think, and we don't have to drain a lot of earning assets out there, right? To put them on our books that remain where we could be in a position 6 months later, be like, God, I wish I didn't do that loan. The rate's too low. Now look what happened, right? If we're in a floating rate environment and we as a bank are floating the entire time, then we can't really get hurt as much.
So do you think it's going to be tough period for business in general, but do you think that's a good or bad thing for SBA lenders? Because historically, I feel like it's been sort of counter-cyclical, but that said, also, I haven't seen it where you're in a downturn economy and the rates are going up at the same time. I feel like usually it would be like the opposite.
I think if you're going to be in the 7A world, you got to have a competitive advantage of some sort in the institution you're at, right? It's got to be speed, good structure, creative structure to get deals done. We are lending nationwide on 10-year deals, right? Business acquisition deals primarily. I think, like I said, I think that's just the best route to go for financing for business acquisition and partner buyout deals. One. And then the flip side, on the real estate side of things, our competitive advantage, I think, is minimal down payment, right? It's a true rent replacement deal. You can come in with, 100% financing, right? I think our credit folks kind of get it, right? In the sense that they want the bar to preserve their capital, right? So as long as their business is cash flowing, it's been in existence for a while, pretty solvent, and the personal guarantors have some financial wherewithal. Our policy, our thought process is to have them hold their capital, for their business or their personal needs, and come to us for close to 100% financing, if not 100% financing. So I think we're set up well. I think investor lending is going to be tough, right? Cap rates don't make sense just in general. On that side, that's one reason that kind of switched, right? Aside from the fact that Patty Marina, who are great people and very easy to work with, my boss, super supportive, and the opportunity, right, to grow this, right? I think was all very attractive to me.
So as you go out and now try to bring on some new BDOs, how do you know that you're hiring the right type of person? First of all, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a top producer, or are you looking for, a 10 to 12 that you can coach up to 15 to 20? Like, what are we looking for?
I'd love to get the top producers. The problem with the top producers is they're always funding deals, right? So it's always like, oh, next month after I get paid this commission check, but it's always the next month, right? Because they're always producing, right? So getting them to come over is tough. I think my thought process is if they're with a smaller institution or smaller bank, that credit's going to start tightening up on those smaller institutions more so than the larger ones. Trying to get them to come over, absolutely. I think it might be possible, but it's probably 6-12 months away. What I'm looking for in a potential BDO is somebody who's hungry, right? Somebody that doesn't need to do prodding. You can't teach passion. It's either you have it or you don't. So if people are, passionate about what they do and experienced, then yeah, absolutely attractive to me to bring on board. And I think it's got to be a partnership, right? We've got to be a good fit for them, right? These folks, nobody likes switching jobs, right? Nobody likes, doing all of that, changing, their strategy and the credit box and having to kowtow to a different credit administrator. Nobody likes doing that. So I think I'm really looking for hungry, smart individuals willing to adapt in this environment. Don't need much supervision because I'm not a micromanager. I can do it really well, but I don't like doing it. And just want support and want to be with a good institution that's good, got good work-life balance. I think that's what it's attractive. I'll work at the First Bank.
John, how do you look at a resume and see passion?
No, you don't. I think you look at the resume, you see experience, right? That's what you see. But having been in this industry a long time, I can make calls and find out somebody who knows about that person that I'm looking to hire. I think passion comes from talking to them, getting in front of them face to face is really the best way to really gauge that, right? I think resume gets you in the door, right? And the face-to-face meeting is kind of what closes the deal.
That makes sense. Are you afraid that if you find someone extra passionate, that they will be extra passionate to the underwriters and closers?
They often are, right? They often are. That's my job to kind of be the peacemaker in that sense, right? And to kind of try to be the buffer. I'd rather be hire somebody more passionate than somebody who's a little bit more aloof. So I think teaching passion, like I said, is impossible to do. Trying to calm somebody down is much easier to do, right? I like hard drivers, absolutely do.
Good. I agree. Like I became sort of player coach this year for the first time, and I basically said I just wanted to find people that could be top producers or are top producers, and we can teach the rest. It's harder than I thought, but
yeah.
I still am happy with my decisions because I was right in the sense of like all these folks have passion and they want to be the best and they want to put up some big numbers, and they are. So that part's going well, but managing has been very challenging for me as someone who's been doing it for just 6 months.
Yeah.
Versus production, which comes like totally natural to me.
Yeah. I mean, you want type A personalities, but you get 10 type A personalities in the same room. I mean, it could be challenging, right? I think getting type A personalities, but still willing to collaborate and work with each other and share best practices, that's what's key, right? And, at Patty Marina, I definitely have that. They're team players all day long. I just need 4 or 5 more Patty Marinas is basically what I need.
Well, good luck with that, John.
Exactly.
I appreciate you coming on today. I really enjoyed the conversation. I wish you luck with this mission that you're working on carrying out here.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, email me at ray@artofsba.com. Until next time, ta-ta.